now to introduce yourself. We'll just kind of go through and maybe who you are, where you're from, and why you think that this is an important webinar for yourself. So I'm Carla Leon with Edge, Manager of New Initiatives, and I think this is important because many of our ministries are really great at what they do, really huge impact, great spiritual grounding, but not always financially sustainable. So how do we look at different revenue streams to help with that? So that's me. Peter. You're on mute, Peter. Standard.
I was going to stay that way. So my name is Peter Miller, and I run the Markham Community Innovation Hub, where we have 21 hubsters who are small business, nonprofits, and charities. And they qualify to use the unused space as long as they give back to the community.
Sandra.
Hi, Sandra Smith from Barrhaven, which is a suburb of Ottawa. I'm affiliated with Barrhaven United Church. I'm also a licensed lay worship leader in the United Church and very interested in different Edge kind of funding groups and different United Church funding groups, just wondering where to look for funding for different ministries that may be growing or need some support, or just new ideas, really, where the funding is.
Great, thank you. Carol Henniger. Not quite sure if we can hear you right now. It looks like you're on mute. You're still not coming through, so if you can introduce yourself, that's great, or you can type in the chat. We're not able to hear you right now. Dave, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself. Sounds like you're muted, but I can see you. Oh, we can't hear you either. I can see you now, though. I'm not doing this intentionally for people. Judy?
Hi, everybody. I'm Judy Coffin. I'm actually in Montreal and at St. Genevieve United Church. And I am a part-time program coordinator for a new initiative that we started a couple of years ago called Aura, Loss in Living. And I'm really interested today because so far, Edge has been a great funder and supporter of our program, but I think if we're going to go long term, we really need to figure out ways that we can be self-sustaining. And so I'm hoping that there are ways that in today's presentation that we'll learn some new ways that we can do that.
Awesome. Well, welcome. St. Jenny's in the house. I like it. And Carol, then she said that she is from First United in Mississauga and from the Strategic Mission Development Committee in Halton Presbytery. Thanks. Welcome. And Cameron Fraser.
Am I coming through?
Oh, yeah.
Great. I'm Cameron Fraser in ministry at Knox Metropolitan United Church, downtown Regina, Saskatchewan. We're a large building downtown, in the downtown of the city. And I'd say looking at financial sustainability beyond just the congregation is part of what we're thinking about for the future. We've got a big old building that needs some significant upgrades and needs to change to be more accessible and inclusive. And I think we're recognizing that if our future is just congregation stream givings around that, if it's just kind of small scale rentals and performances in the sanctuary, then there's no sense in doing any of our upgrades because we're neither filling a large enough need in the community, and we're definitely not going to be long-term financially sustainable. So we're really interested in learning about what others are doing.
Awesome. Okay, welcome to the conversation. And then Dave, sorry about the mute system sometimes. I'm the one who usually screws up tech, so that's good. I am not alone. you're in Moncton, New Brunswick. Welcome from Central United. Very wonderful. And the Community Peace Center. So yes, I know lots of great history with Central, and it'll be nice to hear more of your story. So I probably will encourage you to keep typing, Dave. So the way that this works is there's a lot of content in here today. We're excited to do this online. We actually ran this webinar for the Hubsters at the Community Innovation Hub in Markham a couple months ago. And they're all social enterprises trying to be creative. With the church context, it's going to be a little bit different, but it was really neat that when we went through this, we recognized that this is not just for social enterprises, this is for churches as well. So the church really is kind of a social enterprise. It's what we've been doing for a while. So just to jump in, hopefully everyone can see my screen. Fundraising. We're going to start basic, and then we're going to get more and more creative. And basically each of them is just a layer upon a layer of each other. So fundraising is something that we're really, really good at as church. And in each of these sections, when we go through it, we're going to talk about when is it a fit? And then we're going to talk about all the best practices of doing it. And then try and have some sort of a church context to it. I encourage you at any time, if you have a comment that you want to add in, please just type it in or unmute yourself and say, I have an example of how we did this. So fundraising. Fundraising is very, very important and really, really great when the need is really compelling. So that's when it is the easiest. So if you can think about any large capital campaigns that you do, or something that's a crisis that happens, that's when it's always easier to fundraise. You can think about tragedies in the news and how quickly they have a GoFundMe page and how people respond to that right away. And also, like, if you've experienced the need yourself, that's when it's more compelling. So what's really interesting in church life, the best fundraising is always PAR. You've probably heard this before, but if you can have people sign up for PAR, which is the weekly giving that's online, that's actually a leading indicator of the vitality of your ministry. So if you actually notice people are unsubscribing to PAR or people are subscribing to PAR, that is actually a direct correlation of how much good they think you're doing in neighborhood or for themselves. And congregations and ministries that see those numbers going up, it's actually a responsiveness of how adaptive and transformative they've been in their neighborhood as well. Because the question is, and I've asked my mother this, so hopefully she doesn't watch this webinar. My question has always been, what's more compelling? Is it more compelling that the ministry is doing great things in the neighborhood, or that you have a leaky roof? The roof is not the benefit, right? The roof, we think that we need our assets, obviously, to continue to do the mission. But the mission is the why. The work we do and how we live out our faith is the why. And that's super compelling. That's why people like Peter are here and everyone else. So when you're doing fundraising, just always think, like, what is the why? And the more compelling it is, and the stories and testimonials that you have of people doing great things, that's even better. So we have a chat question in here. Sandra, will everyone be receiving notes from these? I can send out the PowerPoint slides to everyone at the end. Good question. So when is this a fit? The bigger the need, the more important it is. And then also when to do this. So the biggest and most important reason to do this is that if you have a big campaign, definitely having people sign up for PAR so you can keep on planning and avoid any building maintenance issues. And then ongoing fundraising. A lot of times people think that they have to have a big fundraising gala and this really big event. Often what happens is when you have a huge gala and a huge event to do the majority of your fundraising, you burn out your volunteers. And secondarily, what happens is that you actually don't raise more money than if you had done smaller events throughout the year. So it's an interesting thing to weigh against each other, but fundraising, I think we're all pretty good at it. But just understanding that PAR is definitely the way. And then what you're also going to see is the quests. The quests happen when there's a need and when people can see that like there really was amazing work done by the church and their community. And even in the yearbook data, it's quite shocking to me. You can look at all the congregations that received the quest, then you go over to their name, and they're probably the leaders. They're probably the churches that are doing amazing things elsewhere. The bequests and the PAR numbers, they follow suit because the needs and the benefits have been clearly articulated. It's very interesting. So next one is something called crowdfunding. So it's kind of like you go fundraising, which is what we're pretty used to as an organization, and then we jump into crowdfunding. Question from Peter. Fundraising must provide benefits to those participating and those contributing. Exactly. It's all about the benefits and articulating that. And also there are measurable outcomes that are published and presented. So yeah, even telling the stories of the testimonials and who is it impacting, so people are really seeing that. Thank you, Peter. So crowdfunding is a little bit different, and it's really growing, especially with all the online communications that are available. But this is a growing of fundraising where you actually make it more available outside of what your existing congregation or your network might be. And typically this is really helpful with Canada Helps has access to this. There's a lot of GoFundMe type platforms that are out there. And the reason that these work really, really well is if the storytelling or it's quirky and people hear about it really, really quickly. So the Ice Bucket Challenge was a crowdfunding program at the same time, right? So they use social media to get it out there that you should also be donating to at the same time. So how do you do crowdfunding? What's really neat is Canada Helps as a charity, because as churches, we're already registered charities. You can actually have a crowdfunding page on Canada Helps that you can promote. And you could actually promote within Canada Helps a specific campaign or program. So for instance, if at St. Jenny's, what you could do is have a special crowdfunding campaign just for the grieving program and the bereavement center. And people can drop down and actually fund just for that part. And it's nice because it's online and it's just a click of the button for them to do. Also within a platform like that, the more visibility and people who go to that, the higher ranked it gets. So more and more people online start seeing it. The key is to have great videos. That's the number one thing. So if you already have a video and you have a story that you're able to share, well, A, put it on your crowdfunding, and B, send it to me because I want to put it in the newsletter. And it's really great because we've had churches across the country sending me videos. And then if they link it to a crowdfunding, it's just another way of getting that out there. So a key thing of this is choosing your platform. I mean, I'm talking about GoFundMe. There's Kickstarter is another one you might have heard of. And then there's also Canada Helps. GoFundMe is not for charities, really. It's for individuals who are trying to raise money. I've seen people who are ill. I know that any of the local tragedies that we've seen, they have a GoFundMe page. You don't actually get a tax receipt on it, which it's fine for someone who, like, I feel bad for someone. I want to support that individual. That's how it works. Kickstarter is a little bit different. The way that Kickstarter works is it's more for startups. It could actually be for artists who want to launch a new theater company or something like that, or a new theater show that they need to get licensing rights or something like that for. Again, this is actually very relevant for a church could be on that, right? You could have a theater production that you go to Kickstarter to get your startup funding. Again, you have to have videos, you have to have it localized. You definitely want more people to promote it so you get higher level awareness on that platform. But for this one, you could actually be a for-profit or a nonprofit or a charity to be on Kickstarter. And they've recently come to Canada. The hard part is there's so many people on that platform that you're competing against a lot of people. I've seen game boards have been launched. And sometimes if someone pays you enough money, you might actually make one of your game figurines look like that person. Or maybe you're actually funding a book and you want to self-publish. You might name one of the characters someone who funded you. So that's how that one works. Yeah, it's kind of fun. And then the last one, of course, being Canada Helps. But there's a lot out there. And there's lots of niche ones that are popping up, but these are kind of the main ones. Canada Helps is really great, again, just for us because we're already listed on it. You just have to activate your site and you can create crowdfunding campaigns through them. I know Windermere United Church in Toronto is a great example. They actively use Canada Helps in their crowdfunding for Syrian refugee sponsorship, and they got tens of thousands of dollars because they were one of the only localized charities that promoted that in the where they are. So they're in Bloor West Village area, so by Hyde Park. And so everyone in that neighborhood just started funding them. And they actually had people walking off the street because they found about it. And they actually would get checks in the mail of over $10,000 of people who didn't show up to church for it. The name of the church is Windermere United Church. So it's W-I-N, 1 second. I'll just type it in here. Windermere, where is it? Windermere. And so that's Alexa Gilmore is there. Okay, so the next one here is grants. So I know that I'm starting kind of at basics. I mean, crowdfunding was a little bit more quirky, but grants, we probably all know grants, and probably many of you guys know Embracing the Spirit grant. But what I really want to talk about here is as churches and as communities and ministries and as the Community Innovation Hub, our first thing to do is to turn to church grants. And so I always kind of laugh at it because I'm like, we haven't increased the size of the pie. And you're going to find this very interesting. Out of 2,200 pastoral charges, only 6% of them, and this is before Embracing the Spirit. Before Embracing the Spirit, only 6% of them actually applied for grants. And of those grants, 80% of them were within the church. So that's more like 1% of churches apply for non-church grants. Now, we've been doing great things for a long time. We've been starting so many nonprofits, so many charities, and making so much of a social impact. And yet, for us to not apply for grants, which, by the way, almost every other nonprofit in Canada relies on grants. Meanwhile, 1% of us have bothered to do it. Thank you for coming to this webinar, by the way. So, when is this a fit? It's always a fit. Like, just do this. And so what you need to do is you need to figure out whether or not what you're doing and whatever your mission is, who are the funders and the grantors who care about the same thing as you? Because you are going to be shocked. There is always someone who cares about what you're doing. There better be, otherwise you probably shouldn't be doing it because no one else cares. But there's a reason why you care about it. It's probably the same reason why other people care about it. So finding those people. We do have a grant writer on staff with Edge. We'd be able to look up on the database for you, but just kind of running through them. I mean, number one that you always want to look at is Summer Jobs Program with the Canadian government. You can get as many students as you want for 40 hours a week for 16 weeks, starting May until the end of August, paying minimum wage. It's a huge relationship builder. And there's almost no other denominations other than United Church that can get it because we're the only ones who are 100% equality and equitable and human rights appropriate. And because of that, we can have as many students as we want. I've seen, I know Markham, St. Andrews, they just got approved for 6 students. I know over 100 churches that are now applying for this because we've actively been telling them. I know that St. Paul's in Oakville, they basically run their vacation Bible school off of this. This is something that everyone should be doing, and you should always ask for more than what you actually need. Thank you, and I see that people are chatting. Sandra, will you be able to include what you just said in the information you send us? Okay, yes. So basically, Summer Jobs Program is number 1. Number 2 that everyone should be looking at is accessibility. And I know that there's this big challenge that we're always worried about our buildings being accessible. And the Canadian government, again, has an accessibility grant of up to $30,000, $35,000. They do fund churches. It obviously is not going to be entire elevator that they're funding, but it will fund your ramps. It will fund your bathrooms. Like there are like $30,000 can still do a lot. Did anyone have a question? I thought I heard someone coming online.
I did, but I think I lost it, but maybe it'll re-jog.
Awesome. Cameron actually came in and said, we get annual funding of between $15,000 to $20,000 from family foundations managed through South Saskatchewan Community Foundation. I believe, yes. So there is a national network. They're called Community Foundations of Canada. They actually have an arm that is called Knowledge Exchange, Community Knowledge Exchange. And we're actually, as United Church of Canada, a national sponsor with Community Foundations of Canada and their Knowledge Exchange. They know about us. We are on their radar. They come to our events. We've been partnering with them. So thank you very much, Cameron. Like, we've been working nationally to get on the radar of these funders so that they believe that we can do what we say we can do. And we've seen very actively that great example would be West Bank United Church in West Kelowna. They got a $5,000 Embracing the Spirit grant to launch a soup kitchen because they had homelessness. It was banned in Kelowna, so all the homeless people walked over the bridge, but there was no agencies in West Kelowna. When they got the $5,000, they started action. They started getting partnerships. They told the local Okanagan Community Foundation about what they were doing, and the Community Foundation gave them another $20,000. So they got 4 times as much money or 5 times as much money because they started telling people about it from a seed fund of only $5,000.
That's great.
Yeah, I love their story. So do your research. First thing to do is talk to them. So West Bank, they started speaking to them. I'm sure Cameron speaks to his funders, right? Like they know what you're doing. You report back to them. And then when you write the grant, you might not get the grant the first time. I'm just going to be honest. You might not get it the first time because they're going to be like, church, what? But here's the thing, is if you write it the second time, you get the feedback, you adapt to what they said, you focus on the relationship, you update them, even though they didn't fund you about how awesome your mission is. The second time they will fund you. And if we all as United Churches acted in this way, they'd start funding us the first time instead of the second time. It's an advocacy piece that we need to be united on. But the other one, just to raise up, is New Horizons. If you're doing any sort of seniors programming, New Horizons has 1 or 2 intakes a year. They can fund up to $30,000, $35,000. And I mean, the majority of our churches do seniors programming. Why not have a grant for it? I'm loving these chats, but I'm always worried what people are saying. Okay, Cameron, not worried. Okay. We send in an update annually, attend any events that they have, and our board chair and I meet with the Community Foundation for a coffee once a year. Yes, awesome. Absolutely. Thank you for validating what I suspected. That is exactly a best practice. Congratulations. Okay, so thank you. Let's move into the next thing, events. So we already started talking about events a little bit here. The number one thing is if you're going to do a large fundraiser, you can't have any other events. Your large fundraiser is just, that's your annual budget is what you're going for. And like I said before, only a very few number of organizations are able to do that. Like the Met Gala in New York City. Like there's a butterfly gala here in Toronto. There's a few that can do it, but typically what you want to do is smaller things. So like once a week or twice a week and have a free will offering or some sort of regular tickets for some sort of membership thing. That's usually better. The only time to also really focus on events as a revenue generator is if you're getting a secondary benefit, and that is because people are relationally focused, right? So as church, the relational piece of events is important, but draining event planning is not what we're looking for. So how do we have that balance and keeping that top of mind? So we talk about galas here, but really, can we do smaller events? Okay, membership. So membership starts to get a little bit funny when we look at church, because our version of member is maybe different than what we think about what other nonprofits would consider, like an association. But then we have the Community Innovation Hub. Does it make sense to have a membership program? So when you have a membership, what you really have to be thinking about is, why do they want to be part of it? What sort of value are you providing? So is it actually that you gather regularly? Is it that they actually get some savings programs some other way? Is it that you market for them? Like, what else are you doing for them or making their lives easier that they're willing to pay for? So lots of examples, but I mean, boards of trade, BIA, so business improvement areas, they do collective events to drive traffic, they advocate on their behalf, those types of things. One membership program, we actually just negotiated it yesterday, the Ontario Nonprofit Network. They've just licensed all United Churches in Ontario, so 750 of us are all members now of the Ontario Nonprofit Network. And so what they do is they advocate the Ontario federal and municipal government levels on our behalf, but we have insight on that. They host amazing networking events. They provide free webinars for all the mentor members. And then they also have started to add in savings programs similar to what we have with Buying United. So there's a few pieces there that they keep on thinking, what's the value? Because if you can get a member, that's great, but how do you have them to renew? And any sort of membership piece, it's not who's new that you really care about. You actually care about having your existing members being really, really happy. So we could compare this to a church in this, is that it does matter more about who's in the church and how are we responding with each other. And new people are a bonus of how do they then get integrated and continue to want to stay. So I know some people have actually asked a friend to be a secret shopper in their church and to show up on a Sunday and then give us frank feedback of, like, did you feel welcome? Mm-hmm. What was a barrier to staying? So secret shoppers, yes. Really interesting. Mm-hmm. And if you need a secret shopper, I'm sure Peter will volunteer. Okay, so the next thing is a fee-for-service program. And again, this is a stretch because as communities of faith, we're used to, we don't always want to have a fee on things. And I know, especially for Embracing the Spirit recipients and applicants, this is a conversation. It's like, is it a free will offering? Is it a membership fee? Is it something that we can actually ask for funding on it? What does that look like? Probably my best example is United Church camps. United Church camps are typically 1/3 the price of YMCA camps. Isn't that shocking? Like, YMCA is also a Christian organization that's helping marginalized youth. Mm-hmm. So the fact that we're 1/3 of their price, it recognizes that we're scared to ask sometimes. And Peter will laugh because I'm not very good at asking either. But but sometimes, these are something to try. So for programs, it's when is this a fit? Is when clients are in fact willing to pay for a program. I think one of my favorite examples of Embracing the Spirit is Ebenezer United Church. They actually did a legal clinic for new immigrants. And it was kind of neat for them because they would have like 70 new immigrants show up. These new immigrants, when they have legal advice, it costs them $10,000 to $15,000. So they're willing to pay. It's not that they can afford the $15,000, but they don't want to get deported either. And so Ebenezer United Church offered these free legal clinics. And the conversation was, does it need to be free? I mean, you don't need to charge $15,000, but if you can keep on offering legal clinics that it reduces their other costs, it's still very beneficial. Okay, let's see what the chat says here. how many camps and how would a new one be started? You're hilarious. So there's 54 United Church camps right now, and very important that, and part of this right now is they're looking at how do they increase their price, have more distributed price. It's actually an example for later. And then also increase the season. So increase how much time they can actually charge for. So instead of it just being for the summer, could they actually start having other programs, maybe like graduation trips for primary schools in April and May? Can they extend it to professional development days or orientation times at colleges and high schools and public schools in September and October? Could they actually be for Girl Guides and Boy Scouts in those bridge seasons? And so a lot of the church camps are extending their seasons, as well as having graduated pricing, as opposed to just being $360. Could you have a $500, a $360, and then something that's below cost at $200, or even free? So how can you balance that? Okay. I'll respond to Peter later on his last comment. So, so how do you do this with programs? The biggest thing is determining that there is in fact a need. So with Ebenezer United Church, it's quite interesting because they knew that these new immigrants are already paying $10,000 to $15,000. And yet they are coming up with a creative way to disrupt that and still have a social justice lens. The people are still paying for it, but it's such a reduced level. They're paying more like $50 instead to still get the same type of information that they need. Okay, so the next example is cross compensation. So not everyone always has to pay the same amount. So does this make sense? It's when some clients are willing to pay and able to pay a higher price than others. And so the camp is a great example because they have the regular price is at $500 or $600. By the way, YMCA is at like $780. Then they have, like, that's the high price. They probably should be $780. Then you have the next level being at cost or maybe $100 margin. And then they have one that's highly subsidized at like $150 or $200 for people who really can't afford more than that, but they're losing about $200 per child at that level. But then the people who are paying the $700 or $600 are able to make sure that the whole thing breaks even still. This is also really a great example for like any sort of missional work or overseas. So I know not necessarily with Go Project, but they do have that, but any of the social justice training for youth and young adults going overseas. Well, some kids are willing to pay the $2,000, $3,000 to go on the trip or more, whereas other kids aren't. So there are ways to actually cross-pollinate. I know the big question is on this is how do you still make people feel safe? So I'm not going to say I have all the answers. I know on the camp side, they just have the 3 offers and the 3 options. Typically, what I see with willing, like, it's a pay what you can approach on this. One way to do is if they are going for the lower amount is to have a bigger registration piece where if they're asking for a subsidy, they have to tell their story. So that's something that my own company, Small Business Solver, that's what we do is if you ask to get access to our small business training for free, you have to then tell us why you need it for free. Or like why your story and what impact will this training make for you. And so for us as an organization, we want to help everyone. We still know there's value in what we're providing. And now for the ones that we are able to subsidize, we have a great story to tell of the people that we're helping, even though they couldn't afford it. So as part of the testimonials, it starts to become part of your marketing tool. Mm-hmm. So for this one, again, it starts with, like, you still have to make sure there is a need. And remember, like, if there's not a need, like, we shouldn't be doing things. This one still has competitive. But here, there is also the marketing strategy. So I had the word vocalize, but like talk about how this is for everyone and being very clear about the differences. See, it's getting more fun, right? We have more. So skills development. This one's really neat because you are making money and you're able to break even, but your outcome is that people are growing through your programming. And we're seeing that in some jurisdictions in Canada, skills development is actually the definition of social enterprise. So hiring marginalized people, being marginalized youth, people who with disabilities, visible or otherwise, people who are, sometimes this could be even in rural communities where there might not be as many opportunities. All of these types of hiring people who otherwise would not have the sense of growth, the sense of, entitlement is not the right word. I'm trying to think the right word, engagement. Engagement is the right word, where they are engaged and their confidence increase. Thank you. I hope someone has a better word for me in this chat. Oh yeah, Peter, you're right. I was talking about the Raw Carrot is a great example of someone who does the skills development, and that's in Paris, Ontario at Knox Presbyterian Church there. They hire people with disabilities. They then make organic, beautiful, delicious soups, and then they sell them. And Mount Forest United Church has actually been their first franchise location and doing exceptionally well. Cameron, I see your comment. We've started putting a suggested contribution for study or education events that we thought would be of interest to community members, such as guest speakers from the university and a 4-week program with the local Cree elder. Both events were advertised as pay what you can, great, and covered much of the cost of running the event. I really appreciate that. So yeah, giving a suggested donation is really important on the previous examples. And what we're actually doing at the Festival of Faith, which is like the launch party of General Council 43, is we're giving artisan tables at the artisan markets for anyone who's interested. And then we have a suggested donation to mission and service to cover the cost. But we're not asking specifically for a price up front because we do want it to be radically open. So example, when is this a fit? The value is created during the training. So it's the hands-on training is what you're looking for. So manufacturing of the soup is part of the training. Another social enterprise is called Building Up. They actually do retrofits of plumbing. So like they reduce the usage of water in toilets and just overall like apartment buildings. And so they save the apartment building money. They help the environment. And they hire marginalized youth and they give them additional like financial literacy training, network training, resume and interview training. And then after they have a 3-month on the job training, they then help them find a job somewhere else. So Raw Carrot is actually in 2 churches, Building Up. We do have a relationship with them as United Church of Canada. Furniture Bank is another example of a social enterprise that hires people to refurbish old furniture. They sell the furniture and then they're training people actually how to start their own decorating businesses. Yeah, so cool, right? And there's actually a furniture bank in, oh my gosh, Highlands United Church in North Vancouver. And so they're now working with the Furniture Bank here in Toronto to learn more about social enterprise work and potentially getting into skills development. Come on, isn't this hopeful, cool stuff? So how to do this, fill a need, you're seeing the theme, but then really figuring out on this one, what is the real training that they need? I think that it's been really lovely at Raw Carrot. The main piece that they want is that everyone's feeling their confidence increase, and also they have a family where they hang out together. Good Foot Delivery hires people with disabilities and they do parcel delivery in the Greater Toronto area. And they continue to actually promote people from delivery to sales. Then like, let's get them into a management position. And so when you start hiring people and doing some of the core skills, being financial literacy for Building Up or whatever, what is that package? And then if it is possible to continue to get them into management, because the most beautiful thing would be if this social enterprise within your church or ministry is actually run eventually by the marginalized people themselves. Because then all of a sudden you flipped it on its head. Yeah, there's a really great, I forget the name of it, but in Vancouver, downtown east side, they are actually, it's the people who pick through the dumpsters and they find all the recycled bottles and everything, and they make their money on that. They actually have created an event cleaning company as well as a recycling company to help turn that into an organization. And I think the dumpster folks, I forget what they're called. I feel like they have a hilarious, amazing name. They're now becoming management within the organization. And there's only 2 people who have never actually gone through garbage who are still working there. And yet they do cross training where you can't manage that company unless you have also picked through a garbage bin.
Very nice. Wonderful.
Thanks, Sandra. I saw a note come through. Oh, Peter's telling me to be quiet, but it's a webinar, not an online conversation. So any questions about anything that we've chatted about, or we'll keep going? The next 3 are basically the intermediaries. So there's market intermediary, and there's distributor intermediary, and then there's administrator. So we'll go through each of these. And that's basically like you as a church or as a community of faith or as someone who's well networked, like whoever you are, there's value in the people that you know. And everyone knows 250 people, but the social capital we have as church is amazing. And typically it takes 15 years to build social capital. And we've been around in general for over 90 years in most communities. So what does that mean? So it means that we have access to an audience, right? So you have access to your own members. And is there a way to give access to the members in a way? So a great example of this is Buying United. So Buying United is our central procurement with the United Church of Canada. We've negotiated vendor agreements, and we make sure that, or sometimes with video licensing, these are things that we can actually do mass, we can negotiate with some of these vendors, get significant discounts, and then make sure that we get it out to people. So we take out the marketing piece, which allows them to actually provide further value. United Church Protect, so UCC Protect with Hub International, we save 10 to 12% just because they don't have to market to the churches. So those are great examples of like, okay, a marketing intermediary. Do you have that capability? There's also going to be the ethical dilemma where you go, is that something that our members or our network wants from us? For Peter's case with his Community Innovation Hub, definitely his hubsters and social enterprises he's working with, he does want this because they want to know about savings at Staples Copy and Print. That's a benefit and a value for them. And maybe this ties into a membership later on. Distribution is maybe people just don't have access to getting it to people. So a good example of this might be the food delivery system. So if you have a relationship with a local farmers and they want to actually have a place where they can cross-dock and get it to the local restaurants, or if they want a place where people can actually pick up their fresh vegetables, maybe your church is the place. So St. Matt's United Church in downtown Toronto, they're actually a cross-dock facility for food share, which basically does that. And then in Montreal, in Verdun, oh no, you guys probably, it's David Lefnesky, is that right? His mission there, they also are a food hub, where basically they have all the food coming in from local farmers, they create bags for pickup that cost money, and then all the people come by the mission, pick up their designated bag, and they are able to make some margin, if not break even for sure, but I believe they make margin on that as well. So anything where you can actually help in scaling or leveraging your place, that's really helpful. And then there's the admin intermediary. What is really emerging, the Ontario Nonprofit Network has research on this, is it's called shared platform. So I can't tell you how many nonprofits and charities and social enterprises have their initial roots in United Church of Canada somewhere. Welfare actually came out of St. Columba House in Montreal as a shared platform. So they basically said in St. Columba House, they're like, oh, we should actually look after people. How do we do that? And then when they figured it out and it had gained energy, it became welfare. So a shared platform is basically maybe one of your community outreach ministries, or maybe there's a local spiritual entrepreneur in your neighborhood that doesn't actually want to incorporate separately, or they haven't done it yet. Or maybe it's going to take them years to figure out how to become a charity. Well, your board can actually adopt a nonprofit or a social initiative or project as your mission. And if you do, you can actually be the back end for them. So Go Project is a great example. Go Project is basically youth social justice training across Canada. And they have been a shared platform of Islington United Church for 12 years. How many people knew that Go Project is not Go Project? Erin Mills United Church launched the Erin Mills Youth Center, I don't know how many years ago. And it was about 6 years, 5 years, that it was still a shared platform under the church where they did all of the bookkeeping for them, the insurance, all that type of stuff. And it's not that it's just pro bono. I mean, you could charge maybe 10 or 15% of their operating costs to recoup. Whatever that relationship looks like, if you're providing value for them as an admin back end, using the photocopier, using the Wi-Fi, using the space, maybe there's in fact a fee that can go with that. So this is really big when admin is a roadblock. Definitely is when someone wants charitable receipts. It definitely is when someone's worried about creating a board of directors or liability insurance. It definitely is when they don't even know where to start. And do they want to do all of that in idea on an idea that they don't know if it's going to fly? So this is a huge opportunity for churches. I know that with refugee sponsorship, this is basically the role that we have played. We were the admin intermediary. So the big thing is understanding the needs of who you're supporting, and then just understanding that you do have economies of scale. And we've seen that social enterprises, nonprofits that partner with church are 5 times more likely to be successful. Because guess what? This is handled. Okay, so tying on to kind of the network side of things. Other times that you can use your network and your social capital is recruitment of people and helping people get referrals and those types of things. But relationships are important, but always staying true to yourself, right? So transparency on this, as well as because we're social enterprises or we're socially based, we have to always make sure that ethics are always top line, making sure that we're doing things for the right reason. And I think I only have 10 minutes left, so I'm pretty close to the end, which is fabulous. Sponsorships, another thing that we don't always think about is church. And what's been really interesting, I mean, I could even let Peter talk about this one, is sometimes we don't think that some of these larger organizations want to work with us, but they do. I know that we've run about 100 community roundtables where we've invited community partners into local churches to get feedback of like, what could you see happening here? What are the needs in the community? And the number one surprising thing that churches have faced when they had these roundtables is that the community actually likes them. It was shocking. The community doesn't want the church to close. The community thinks the church is important. And often they think that more than we think that. So sponsorships is a great example of, you might not think that someone wants to be our sponsor, but they do. The Social Innovation Challenge is a great example. Canada Helps jumped on board as a sponsor. Clawstown did. Data Win, the social enterprise, did. We had a travel agency that was local in Toronto give a gift pack. We had another trading company in Windsor wanting to sponsor it because he just thought social innovation and social impact was important. The city of Vaughan is sponsoring the Social Innovation Challenge in partnership with the United Church of Canada on June 7th and 8th. They've actually put up $13,000 as the city of Vaughan to partner with a church. I know that North Bramalea works lots with local sponsors on this. Peter, did you want to talk about the opportunity you're working on? No, okay, we'll keep it hush hush. But yeah, so it's been really interesting who actually wants to be involved. And I think the big thing here is highlighting the benefits that the sponsors will get out of this. So what's their access point? And then also ensuring for yourself that there's strategic alignment. And often you'll be shocked at what the alignment is. When I work with universities, the alignment is that we both want to support young leaders. Like, that's obvious from a church perspective, but guess what? That's also obvious from a university perspective. So it was just finding that strategic alignment. I think Peter's telling me to be quiet again. No. Oh. Yeah, so for the Windsor Social Innovation Challenge, we had a nonprofit come on board who coordinated everything called Boost Innovations. The Windsor Essex Community Foundation came on board to sponsor it. And we actually had a local family foundation show up who wants to sponsor it in future years. So it's an opportunity for sure. Especially, I'm even thinking, you know, the whole Loblaws Weston thing right now. They're going hashtag eat together. Isn't eating together the original church? So I've been trying to find the head of that communications thing because I'm like, hey, if you're going to talk about eating together, we get this. So the final thing I wanted to talk about, or close to, is social finance. So we talked about a lot of the fundraising, sponsorships, events, programming, fee-for-service, all those types of things, the cross-pollination of all of that. But social finance is something that's really emerged. And what this is in some cases, especially if we have a fee-for-service program or some way to leverage future income, we can actually get loans or we can get people to invest in our projects. So the big thing is that if you're trying to get money now, you need to have a business plan of how you're going to recoup it later. Furniture Bank is a great example of how they're using this. They needed to buy more trucks to scale up to the size that they needed. And so they ended up getting a grant from United Way, so Toronto Enterprise Fund, 50%, and then Alterna, the credit union, actually gave them a loan at preferred rates for the other 50% of what they had to have. And so social finance isn't always just a loan. It's not always just a grant. Having the blend makes sense. The other one that we've seen is community bonds. So a lot of churches have actually issued bonds to do redevelopments and things like that, or renovations. But community bonds are something that we continue to explore. In Rodney, Ontario, Calvary United Church, they're using a community bond right now to purchase a strip mall to turn it into a cafe with a youth center at the back and a maker space in the middle. So when we're looking at social finance, we do need security. Often we already have our property, or if you're buying new property, you could have that. And you do need a business plan with more than one revenue stream. But guess what? We just chatted about 12 of them. And then, of course, blended models. So this is actually the most important thing. If you're not going to make all your revenue from one thing, you typically are going to need 3 to 5. If you go over that and you're trying to do everything, it starts to get a little overwhelming. But having a strategic plan for 3 to 5 is really going to make sure that you've mitigated any downside. And what you start realizing is that it's the 80-20 rule. 80% of your funding is typically going to come from one source or one type. And that's where we spend our focus, like even Stick Kids Foundation. 80% of their funding is from the government, but they still have a blended model where the remaining 20% is from some of these other models here.
So that's pretty much a general rule of thumb, 3 to 5 revenue streams, regardless of the new ministry or the new initiative?
So yes, what we see typically on new ones is they actually I'll make a difference. What we see typically on a new ministry is they err on too few.
Yeah.
They usually only have 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly enough, in for-profit land, they err on the other side. They usually start with 8.
Wow.
Right. That's why it's so funny. So nonprofit, we start too few. For-profit, we start too big. But like in real business, like in the long run, think about the normal, all the different revenues that you see, your income statement for your church. It's probably 3 to 5 that you're actually monitoring and worried about.
Okay.
So that's like, as a grown and mature organization, like Coca-Cola, they probably, like, it's the same thing. It starts to narrow down to 3 to 5.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I do find that really interesting. So, but I am showing you kind of all the different things that when the Community Innovation Hub, which is basically a gathering place for spiritual entrepreneurs in Markham, there was lots of talk about, okay, now that we have this going, here's all the different things that we could consider. And so there's so many different ways that they could actually raise money, but the 3 to 5 rule of thumb still comes into account. Can they do everything at the same time? Probably not. So I will leave us at this point of, are there any questions? I feel like people have really jumped in throughout, but maybe you have something burning right now, or I'd love to hear your story. I'll be quiet now as per Peter's request.
Okay, a couple of observations. One, spiritual institutions use about 20 to 30% of their space between 8 in the morning and 10 o'clock at night, which provides incredible opportunities for rentals, for events, where to even include the sanctuary and the space that you have available. And that could be done on a rental basis. And a good example of that is Windermere Church, where very little of their revenue comes from the congregation. It comes from people that use their space. Mm-hmm. Another example is the area of actually leasing or renting the space for a regular event. So at St. Andrews in Markham, they rent space to a tiny tot operation and to a mentally challenged group, where they run stuff from 9 to 3 every day of the week. So there's thrift stores, there's, if you had a commercial kitchen, you could run a program to train people in hospitality skills and to show people how to be running their own business as a caterer. And there are grants available for both of those types of situations. So there are a broad range of multiple sources.
No, and for sure. So the rental we'd probably consider fee for service, definitely, but that's a very specific example. Thank you. And Carol, great presentation, much food for thought. With so much anxiety in churches about shrinking revenue, what can we do to get more than a half a dozen participants to engage with this information? Okay. I think what I've been noticing in terms of change management on the church level is half a dozen is all it takes. And that's kind of the tipping point where when they get excited and they get engaged, I would say you can start with as few as 3. If you have half a dozen leaders excited about this kind of stuff, start with a small win and celebrate the heck out of it. And that's the beginning of your momentum. It's tough, but that's kind of where I start. We have recorded this, so I can share that. The other thing that I posted in this group chat is if you are in the Toronto area, there's an event being held where it's kind of like a matchmaking between art organizations who want to rent the sanctuaries for theater and other art events and churches. And so far, there's a ton of artists in Toronto who've signed up and not enough churches.
So something else I'd like to add is with some of the organizations that I've been involved over the last little while, we're using this term repurposing the church in terms of what it's doing, and having the church as a community hub where spiritual is a part of being a community hub. And you can run a thrift store. Another one that I'd recommend that you take a look at, it's not United Church, but it has incredible programming, is 105 Gibson. 105 Gibson. It's in Markham. It's run by a church. They bought a warehouse next door, 47,000 square feet. And in there they have church services. They have 3 social enterprises. They have incredible programming for seniors and others. So take a look at 105 Gibson Center.
And great comments. Thank you. I'm seeing, so for anybody who wants, we are going to be posting this on YouTube if you want to share with anyone. And Dave, thank you for your comment. Central United rents the sanctuary as well as boardroom for community events such as concerts, but we include volunteer hosts who know the building well, and the renters really appreciate it. I think that's part of the relational piece, right? And plus, the volunteers get to enjoy the concert. That's wonderful. Thank you.
I was just going to say, this time when sometimes churches are getting smaller, do you find there are any people coming to you or to Edge Ministries looking to plant new churches?
Yes, we do have some leaders. We actually have a most recent Embracing the Spirit grant applicant who they are from the evangelical side of things, and they have realized that their values are no longer aligned with their denomination. And they've come to us actually indicating that there's literally hundreds of people like him. And they have a willingness and eagerness to plant and share the gospel and share their faith journey, and yet they don't have a place to land. And so when they come to United Church, we're so different than what they might have grown up with. There's almost like a translation that needs to be done. And so his proposal is like, how do we support these evangelical leaders who are so passionate and so Christ-centric and so great at talking about it? How are we supportive in allowing them and enabling them to church plant within our denomination?
So can you say more about that? Like, what kind of program or revenue stream are they going after or looking at?
Well, they're actually going to plant like a normal ministry. But again, they're very good at asking correctly. And so he's already gathered regularly over 40 people, and they just started like a couple months ago. So he's gone pretty quick. And so we're pretty excited about the leadership there. We have a really neat new ministry that is on Vancouver Island. You might have heard about it, that supplements with baking, like a bakery, as well as a brewery as part of it.
Yeah.
I know that Hillhurst has just actually launched a brewery in and around their church as well, which is quite funny. And I know that there's a lot of co-working spaces and dedicated space. Often the first hurdle, I think, is having the congregation in a place where they understand that dedicated space is part of their ministry, So that's where they assign an office to someone full-time, because there's a lot of control that they feel that they've lost when that happens. And yet they call it Ministry of Space, which I love that, of how can you do that. But new ministries have been looking at some really creative ways of funding it, because it does take time to get the membership itself up and running.
I'd like to go back to Windsor just for a second. When Carla and I were at Social Innovation Challenge in Windsor, what was very cool, there were a couple ladies who wanted to start a co-working space within the church for small businesses and so on. And St. Clair College, which is the community college in the community, brought their students in to redesign some of the space in the church for this co-working space. And several of the students did actual designs of what that space could be look like and how it could be used. A very cool approach using the college students.
Great. Any other questions or comments or stories?
This is really good information. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sandra. Awesome. Well, thank you for all of your passion and I love all the stories that are coming through here, because I'm really feeling as though this is the hopeful stuff, right? And it's really funny that we've heard so many cool things of, the community foundations actually funding, and we've heard about renting out the sanctuary and the boardroom at Central, and like some of these different things. And it's kind of funny that this conversation came from something called revenue streams. Like, I'm just looking at how hopeful this one is, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is not maybe the best topic. It should be like hopeful money or something different, hopeful finance, because revenue streams is just really not lending what we've talked about today, I feel.
Carla, can you talk to them briefly about our new website and how it might help these folks?
Sure, we can send out the link to get it live, but basically the community innovation hub that we have in Markham, we've learned a lot from it of how do you gather spiritual entrepreneurs, do the ministry of space, and how it can evolve into a co-working space, or Peter loves the agri-hood, or a maker space, and some of these other social enterprises that can come out of it. And the playbook of how to start gathering people in this way, and some of the first steps to co-create what it can look like, that's going to be launched in the next month or so. And I know Peter's finalizing the playbook of everything that we've learned. There's 6 or 7 churches I know right now who are doing this work. We're going to have a website, and if you're interested, we'd love you guys to consider being a hub as well. Yeah. Is that okay, Peter? He's going to. Well, thank you, everyone. And if you have any other questions, let me know. But all of you will receive both the PowerPoint as well as the video, so you can reference it, as well as any other links that I can think of as resources for you. And blessings on your day. Thank you for joining us.